Hello and welcome. My name is Jake and I'm joined by Charlie as we discuss the world of football with a focus on data. This is Football with the Faff. How are you doing? You alright?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, doing very well. I will say that since the fantasy football's come out, I have changed my team every day, including this morning. So yeah, it's you know, we're getting there. But first of all, I did want to go through the changes in FPL because, well, they might actually come into play. For instance, the first one, which I think is probably going to be the biggest one, is that each week you get a free transfer you can use. In the past, you could only save up to 2, whereas now you can save up to 5.
Oh wow!
Which, you know, you can change a third of your squad then in 1 week if you keep them all. So
That's
I think
a big one, yeah.
Yeah, and especially if there's times where you just don't play, it doesn't hurt you as much anymore.
Mm.
The next one is a new chip that they're adding. We don't know what it does yet, but it comes out in January, or at least they're going to tell us in January, unless it gets leaked early.
Do we know a name for it or anything?
It's
or is
just
it
called the mystery chip,
Oh.
and it says all will be revealed in January. So that's something to look forward to. It'll probably just be like a second wild card or something, and it's like, you know. But anyway, they've also changed the pitch design. I don't know if you noticed, but apparently
I did. To be fair,
I didn't either. But apparently the pitch has changed. If you hated it before, I think they've changed it to the FPL challenge that they added last season. That had a different pitch, which I mean I didn't play, so I didn't know. But they've changed it to that.
It definitely does look different. To be fair,
yeah. And then some points changes. So now goalkeepers will get 10 points for scoring a goal rather than 6. So, you know, if you think anyone's going to be really lethal in the other net, maybe get them in. And then they've made some changes to the bonus point system, such as saving a pen now gives 9 points on the bonus point system.
I was going to say
15.
that was very generous. Otherwise, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it means, you know, saving a pen not as good. Goalkeepers and defenders conceding a goal get -4 on the bonus point system. Goal line clearances are worth 3 on the bonus point system. A foul is worth 1. A shot on target is worth 2.
So goal line clearances go into the bonus points. I never knew that.
I think that's a change for this year, as well as fouls 1 being an extra point as well. So for dribblers, you know, that often get hacked down, they might become a lot more valuable. I mean, it's only a point, but they all add up, you know.
Yeah.
So that they're the changes for this season. Do you want to go through your team first?
Yeah, I was going to say, why don't we do it by positions? So we'll both go
by positions
for what we've got.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, if we start with the goalkeepers, and we can see if we've got any similarities, and if not, we can argue which is which. So my 2 goalkeepers, I've gone a parallel system this year. I usually go one good one, one bad one. But I've been inspired by my dad, who last year used 2 kind of similarly priced ones.
Yep.
So I went with Anana and Pickford.
Oh, wow. 2 5 million goalkeepers?
Yeah, I had a little bit of money left over, and I thought I'd rather put the extra bit of money in to the goalkeeper rather than another average defender or something.
Yeah, I understand that. I have gone for Pickford as well, mainly because he's a pretty good asset for FPL. I think he got the most points of any goalkeeper last year, and he's always going to make saves. And then I didn't go the same as you. I went for a NAF goalkeeper that might get some time here and there in Fabianski. I don't rate him, but I needed someone on the bench. Because the thing with Pickford is he will make saves in every game. Yeah, he might get thrashed, but he's often still making 6-7 saves. But yeah, what was your thinking with Onana as well?
Yeah, so Onana, I thought, as a Man United fan, I was a little bit pessimistic in thinking that, oh my God, the amount of shots we had against us last year is probably going to be fairly similar, just going on last season's trends. So Onana last year made the most saves in the Premier League and faced the most shots, which I don't think is a massive shock to anyone. But surprisingly, still had a decent number of clean sheets. And he was also in the top 86th percentile in Europe's top 5 leagues for shots on target against. So it's not like we're facing loads of shots that are going a million miles wide or stuff like that. People are taking decent shots on goal at us. And my assumption is that's probably not going to change too much. So in the games where we're playing teams I'd expect us to beat, I might bring Onana in, because even though I'd like to think we're not going to lose, I'm still expecting him to make saves, which I don't think you could say about any of the other kind of top half teams. You'd expect them to be in a little bit more control.
I agree with that. He was someone that I looked at as well, given he faced the most shots. You have made a big signing in defence now, in Euro, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. He played the friendly on a couple of days ago now against Rangers and looked really, really sharp. But the bit that worries me is having Casemiro in midfield. Even if you do have a brilliant back four, you're still going to get enough chances one-on-one with the centre-backs to get a shot off.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so what did you think with Pickford then? So we've both gone with Pickford. Where did it go in your brain?
So mainly he got the most points last season. I think often he can be overlooked because he's not necessarily a sexy goalkeeper, in that he can ping balls around and, he's almost a midfielder like Edison, for instance. He is a good shot stopper, and I think that can often be what is most important, especially for a side like Everton. So, Everton will concede chances, people will shoot, and he just seems to be really good at stopping them. We saw in the Euros he made some good saves, and I think certainly, going into what could be another tough season for Everton, he could be one of their big players again, keeping them in games.
Yeah, especially with that Sale falling through, it's looking like it's going to be another scrap year. But for my thinking with Pickford, I kind of went the other way and almost didn't really think about his goalkeeping, and went with how many other goalkeepers take free kicks, how many other goalkeepers kind of regularly launch the ball that far. Yeah. He's surely at some point, I know he got an assist a couple of years ago, but surely at some point they're really going to feed into that and start scoring goals off it.
Yeah.
And obviously on top of that, was he second for clean sheets last year in the Premier League as well?
I believe so. He had 13 clean sheets. And on that, the long balls you were talking about, he actually made 400 accurate ones last season. So, if you've got, Calvert-Lewin up there just to be a target man and then working off that, I think that, he can for sure start a lot of moves, and, a lot of people like playing out from the back, but, play to your strengths.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
If he's accurate at hitting balls long and you've got a big striker, you can work with something there.
Yeah, and you'd expect Everton to be a little bit more settled going into the year with another year under Dyche, squad working together a little bit better. You'd imagine they'll feed into that straight away this year.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, nice. Well, why don't you go first with defenders now, seeing as I went first with the goalkeepers?
All 5. Okay, so I will say defenders have been changing quite a bit in my team. Okay, so I'm starting 3 in my starting 11, which I'll go through first, which is Dan Burn from Newcastle, Gvardiol from City, and Robertson from Liverpool. And then I've also got Anderson from Palace and Ben Johnson from Ipswich.
Okay, so your 3 are Burn, Gvardiol, and Robertson.
Yeah, for the first week at least.
Okay, so what's the thinking behind Dan Burn? Because I can't imagine too many people have gone with him.
No, well, first of all, price, 4.5 mil. I don't necessarily know how many times he'll start for Newcastle, but I believe Botman's out for the first half of the season, and Lascelles is 2. So they're 2 who may have taken his place. I think that he is a good player. He's hard working. He gets stuck in. Obviously, with his height, he's always a threat. And yeah, I don't get me wrong. I don't think he'll be one of the biggest point earners this season. But I think for the start, they've got Southampton at home, first game of the season. We'll know closer to the time probably whether he will start or not based on pre-season games. And as well, Newcastle have a few other players in that price range, so it wouldn't be the hardest thing to switch.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, just another one on Ben Johnson. So I watched Ipswich quite a lot last year, and I was a bit surprised they signed Ben Johnson because they have a really decent fullback in Harry Clark.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure whether that means Johnson's going to start, whether Clark's going to start, whether they're both going to start. Because I know Johnson can play kind of anywhere across a back 4 or 5.
Yeah, I had the exact same sort of caution when I selected him. He selected because he's 4 mil, and I just felt with some of his experience from West Ham and playing in European football, they might look to that and he could potentially, find his feet with them. Because I think there's always been a decent player there, but he's never had the chance to properly shine, and maybe this is the chance. But again, with Burn, there are other options at Ipswich, for instance. If it is Clark that starts, potentially he could be someone I switch to, but I won't be using Johnson lots unless it's an emergency, so I'm not too fazed by him.
Very nice. Right, well, I'll go through mine then. So I've gone with 3 fullbacks, who are my 3 starting defenders, and then I've got 2 centre-backs on the bench.
Nice.
So my fullbacks are Diogo Dalot, Mark Cucurella, and Pedro Porro. Ooh. And then my 2 centre-backs are Harwood Bellis from Southampton and Jacob Greaves, who's just signed for Ipswich.
Yep. Oh, very nice. So if you're playing Dalot, will you also play Onana?
I think that might be where the flexibility comes in. So if we're playing a team that may be a little bit stronger, I'll probably bring Onana out, and depending on kind of just how worried I am about the game, I might bring Harwood Bellis in. I don't expect to bring Jacob Greaves in too much, but I do think he'll start, and he's a minimum price, so that works quite well. But yeah, I think Dalot will probably have to suffer a few times and play anyways, and hope that maybe whips a nice ball in and gets a consolation or something.
Yeah, and then Cucurella and Porro are your other 2 starters. Do you see Cucurella then pushing on from the Euros and really cementing himself as a top left back?
Yeah, so Cucurella's an interesting one because with Enzo Maresca, he kind of, obviously coming into Chelsea, it's so unknown. He hasn't really set a philosophy bar, I want to play with a load of the ball at Leicester, because he switched from a 3 to a 4 a couple of times, so I'm thinking maybe Cucurella could end up as a left wing back, maybe even more involved. And I just think Cucurella's strength is he's a really good ball player. In a team that has a lot of the ball, he's going to look a lot better than he has been under previous Chelsea managers, where they haven't really got a grip of possession. I mean, going through the stats, so he's top 95% for pass completion out of defenders. So if he is pushing up the pitch, you'd imagine that accurate passing is going to become a little bit more visible. He draws a lot of fouls, so those extra +1s in the old bonus points might add up for him this year. And he also does take a lot of free kicks from crossing positions, or he did last year at the very least. Maybe that won't continue. So I just think in a possession-based team, I think he's going to have a much bigger impact. And obviously there is the chance that Chelsea will go to a 3 as well. And all the rumours have been about selling Chilwell, so my assumption is Cucurella is going to be Maresca's man on the left-hand side. So that's why I've gone with it. But yeah, hopefully he'll kick on from the Euros, for my fantasy team at least.
Yeah, I do find it funny with Chilwell and James, for instance, because start of last season, they both started the first game against Liverpool, and it was quite an interesting game, to be fair, but you felt, wow, if these two players can be their fullbacks throughout the season, they've got a chance to do something good. And obviously they both missed the majority of the season. And I think, the likes of Cucurella, although he didn't play amazing, he's at least going to be getting those chances. He knows that he doesn't always have to be at his peak, but especially with another new manager, it's okay, let's see what you can do. And I would agree that he could be a big player for Chelsea, and especially as you say, he could be taking those crossing free kicks, and who knows who could get on the end of them, because I'm sure they'll be making a fair few more transfers before the end of the window.
Yeah, I mean, on that note with free kicks, I mean, that was also kind of my thinking with Pedro Porro, where he is kind of the most attacking defender you can seem to get in terms of statistics, bar the ones that are crazy expensive, like your Trents, for example. But I mean, Porro last year took free kicks and corners for Spurs. He was in the top 92 percentile for XA, so like the expected assists for defenders. He averages 1.5 shots per 90, which is ridiculously high for a defender as well.
Yeah. He does always love just running onto a ball and smashing it. Often, ends in rosette, but yeah, I think that obviously with him, you're probably not going to get clean sheets, but what he offers going forward is better than most, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But yeah. Right, shall I move on to the midfielders?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right, so I've got 4 starting and obviously 1 on the bench. I haven't really quite worked out who of the 4 are going to start and who's the one on the bench, so I'll just read all 5 out equally. But I've gone with Hwang Hee-chan, Jared Bowen, Cole Palmer, Andreas Pereira, and Dwight McNeil.
Wow, okay.
So in terms of that, I think Hwang Hee-chan is a winger converted from a striker. So I don't expect him to kind of be seen as the rest of the midfielders. I think he will be right on the last man, even if he's playing out wide.
Yep.
Bowen kind of tends to be the same, where even though he is involved in the build-up, he's always seen as a real kind of finisher of the move. And then I've got 3 players that are sort of involved in everything in Palmer, Pereira and McNeil. Yeah.
Pereira was someone that I was looking at for a while, wondering if I could get him in, because he's relatively cheap, and as you say, he is involved a lot. Palmer, for me, although he's had this insane price increase, it's probably worth it. He carried that club last season and did things no one expected. So yeah, I think that even without some of the other maybe big names in midfield, you should still be able to get a lot of points, because those players are key for their clubs. They might not score every game, but they still might be the best of their side.
Yeah, I mean, just running through some of the numbers. I mean, Hwang Hee-chan last year got 12 goals in 29 appearances in the league. Jared Bowen got 16 league goals. Cole Palmer obviously got 22. So, I mean, you've got 3 real goal-scoring midfielders in there. But especially for someone like Palmer, I mean, Palmer got 11 assists last year. I'm expecting that to increase because I think Chelsea's finishing was terrible. I don't think wingers like Mudryk and Kunku spent a lot of time out. I think if you've got a kind of attacking quartet, a front four of players that are confident and finishing, I think that assist number is going to rocket, even though his goal number might drop down a little.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that, Nkunku will be a very interesting player to watch because we've seen so little of him.
Yeah.
And as well, he was someone that I thought about in FPL because he's only 6.5 mil, and he could potentially become another great creative output for them. But yeah, I mean, look, sort of as we said with Cucurella, Chelsea's just so hard to predict what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
It's a risk whoever you choose, but Palmer should guarantee at least, he should. I'd say he should be one of the top 10 players in the league next season. Yeah,
I mean, even in a team at the Euros, I mean, he still shone every time he came onto the pitch. It didn't look like he was a decent player in an average team at Chelsea. It looked like he was a great player in an average team, and I think the Euros showed that where he shone as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So who have you gone with your midfielders?
Well, I've also got a 4 in midfield. So we're playing the same formation, which is interesting. I also have Palmer, and then I have Saka, Foden and Gordon. And then on my bench, I have the man, the myth, the legend, Harry Winks.
So go on then, quickly, what was you thinking with Harry Winks? Let's start with that.
Harry Winks. He should start their games, I think, for Leicester. He's not necessarily got the greatest creative output. However, he does pop up with the odd goal when you're not expecting it. So, again, he probably won't start unless there's an injury crisis. I desperately need someone to come in. But for now, he does the job. He's the cheapest a midfielder can be. He will get at least 2 points a week, or he should do. So, yeah, it's a little bit safety, but it allows me to then have these top-level other players in my team.
I mean, he was one of Maresca's star men. I wonder how he'll be affected by the change of manager and obviously the change in system, because Maresca was all about playing with the ball. Steve Cooper, I'm sure, wants to play with the ball, but I'm imagining he won't go to the extremes sort of Maresca did in the Championship.
Yeah, and look, there's a lot of new managers this season. It's made it much harder to be able to be confident in your picks, but I do feel that Winks really can shine with Leicester, and hopefully they can, bring a bit of what they had in the Championship to the Prem, and it's not like last season where we saw all these teams just die out.
All right, so your other 3 that you have starting, you've got Saka, Foden and Gordon, and then Palmer. That was right, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So go on, pick one out of the 3 of Saka, Foden and Gordon, and give me why you think they're going to shine this season.
So, first of all, I'll say with Saka and Foden, I'm not necessarily sure that they will play as much as expected at the start of the season, because they were used throughout last season, and then obviously at the Euros, there could be a bit of a break for them. But I feel that Saka will just have another great year for Arsenal, as much as it pains me to say. You look at him, and he scored 16 goals last season and 9 assists. The XG and XA were right around those numbers as well, so he's meeting the standards that he's setting. And I just think he takes their pens. That might change if they get another striker in or something. And then also their corners. They've got Gabriel, Saliba, who often get on the end of those. and he's just you see him take on a fullback, and the fullback just looks like, oh my god, please just leave the ball, let me take it and go away. I think he's so deadly, and I'll be shocked if he doesn't shine again.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think he will. I just wonder. I mean, he played so much football last year. He almost never got a rest.
Yeah.
Will that affect him this year? Will he maybe be rotated a little bit more? Because I think the thought was the backup was Reece Nelson on that right-hand side, because the backup on the left-hand side was Martinelli.
Yeah.
Because you had Martinelli and Trossard. And I just don't think Arteta fancied Nelson at all. No. Maybe if they get rid of him, they might sign a backup that he's more willing to take Saka in and out for.
Yeah. That is the little worry. I mean, we saw at the end of last season, Saka was playing with an injury, and Arteta kept playing him until the final game of the season, where essentially the league was lost at that point. So, I have a feeling that he will be played a lot, even if he's not 100%. And I hope, for an England point of view, that's not to his detriment. But, for Arsenal, he can get injured as much as he likes.
Very nice. All right, and then shall we move on to the strikers? Do you want to go through your three? I have a feeling we might have at least one similarity.
One similarity? Okay. So, yep, I've got a front three in my starting 11. I've gone for Watkins, Isak, and Muniz from Fulham.
Oh, right. We do have one. It certainly wasn't the player I was expecting it to be, but yeah. So I did consider Watkins, but the reason I didn't go for him was I thought how the Champions League might affect the Villa, whether he'd kind of be the first to go in and out. What was you thinking there?
That did come into my mind as well, and obviously it's a new Champions League format with this league stage where you play 8 teams, where you have 8 games in it rather than the 6 previously. So you need to be able to manage your players better. But I think with the output he had last season, if Villa want to be in around Champions League, Europa League spaces, they rely on him so much. Although yes, he will have to be rotated, I just think that he's too big not to be used at all. So even if there's a game where they go, okay, Watkins isn't starting, I'd still expect him to come on late on just to try and make something happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure, because there's such a dip in quality. I mean, I know it looks like they're trying to get rid of John Duran, but it looks like there's such a big dip in quality if Watkins does go out. I wonder if they will try and sign... Obviously, there's 2 Diaby's going as well.
Yeah.
I wonder if they'll try and sign another proper centre-forward rather than kind of have players like Morgan Rogers, Leon Bailey filling in as and when.
Yeah, for sure. And, that's my point too, that I just don't see how they survive without him. He really was impeccable last season. I mean, he got, I think 19 goals and 13 assists. That is insane. Yeah,
I mean, the assist number is what stands out really as well, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know if... I mean, I put this a lot down to Emery as well. Just the turnaround at Villa from relegation battlers to, top 4 finishers.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Yeah.
The ability he's had to change not just like the culture around the club, but change the players themselves, making them 2-3 times better than what they were just a few years ago. And I just think it's incredible. Also, another point, Douglas Luiz is gone now, their penalty taker. So could Watkins be getting that as an avenue now?
Yeah, very possibly, yeah. So that would make a lot of sense, yeah.
Yeah, potentially his numbers could go up.
I mean, the one thing I would say with the Emery stuff is I do think we all sat there when Gerrard had that squad over that summer where I think they signed Diego Carlos. I think they signed Danny Ings that summer as well. I can't seem to remember. But I think we all sat there and thought, oh, that looks like a squad that could compete for something, whether that's Europa League, pushing. And they just underperformed so badly. Maybe that squad is just finding the level they should have found when Gerrard had them.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. I do think they were a bit of a car on fire under Gerrard. Just nothing seemed to really work for them. And then maybe Emery, with his experience, just stabilised things and said, look, we're going to do things my way, and there's going to be more freedom, because they really are a joy to watch. When they're in the mood, it's incredible football. So I think, obviously Gerrard was a great player, but a manager, he maybe doesn't have that.
It's just not worked, does it? Yeah, not yet, at least.
He doesn't have that sort of respect yet of, oh my God, okay, lads, let's listen to him. And I think that, I'm certain that Emery deserves a lot of credit for the resurgence. And I mean, one thing with Villa as well, how much will losing Douglas Luiz, Diaby affect them?
Oh yeah, I mean it's a big risk.
Players.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I think aren't they getting Onana from Everton?
Yeah, I mean that should
as a replacement
really be a like for like for Douglas Luiz, isn't it? But I mean they're so different players that even though it is like for like positionally, the dynamic could change. I mean Onana's brilliant in the air. Could that see them go a little bit more direct from set pieces, for example? Who knows?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think they'll do okay. They might not necessarily finish as high as last season. I certainly think that's their peak at the minute. But I'm for sure interested to see how they perform.
And the last one I've got for you is Muniz. So
yes,
obviously had a brilliant kind of end to the season last year. Looked like he was out on his way. Spent a year on loan at Middlesbrough last season, and suddenly by the end of it became Fulham's go-to man. They're really willing to take a risk on him this early. That seems a bold move.
Well, he's cheap. He's 6 million, which does factor in when I'm trying to have. Mainly my midfield affects it, but obviously having Isak and Watkins also cost 8.5 and 9 mil respectively.
Yeah.
So I knew I needed a cheaper striker, but I was impressed with him last season. He had 18 starts, scored 9 goals and got 1 assist. So, pretty fair for a Fulham striker. I'm not so sure how well they'll fare this season, but he could certainly help them along. I remember that crazy acrobatic goal he scored as well. So he's got everything in his locker. And I do quite like having that maybe smaller striker that's not necessarily got as much hype around them, but just you will them on. And
if you're looking for a price rise as well, I mean he'll be, if he does start scoring early, he'll be one of the first to really rocket up in price.
Yeah, I think he will have a good season. I think he'll definitely reach double figures. I'm going to say around 12 goals. That's 12 goals.
Huge shout. Wow.
Yeah.
12 goals from Rodrigo Muniz.
It's only 3 more than last season,
Oh, that's a big shout, that.
I have some faith in him.
All right, well, I'll go through mine. I mean, the one that doesn't need any talking about, I've gone with Erling Haaland. I mean, what more can you say? 0.89 goals per 90 in the league, 0.98 XG per 90, wins 87% of his aerial duels. I mean, there's just no point even trying to reason as to why I've done that. I think it's pretty obvious. Yep. I also went with Isak. One of my worries is recurring groin injury that seemed to come up last year. So I'm expecting to maybe bring him out fairly early. But I think with Gordon, Barnes, I'm assuming they're going to lose Almiron. Don't know if that's true. I just don't know what to expect with Newcastle next year. I've got the feeling they're going to end up really direct Route 1, and that's really going to suit him. But I just don't know. I mean, Eddie Howe's being touted around for the England job and kind of isn't really saying no. He's sort of going, well, as long as Newcastle want me, I'm here. But with Amanda Staveley leaving as well, it wouldn't surprise me if Isak's gone by the end of the window.
Yeah.
But for now, I've gone with Isak as well. I think it's a good shout. And then my little bit different is Rasmus Højlund. I was expecting United to sign another centre forward. I think Xerxes that they've signed is more of a technical kind of inside winger. He can play centre forward, but he's not a hold the ball up. He likes to run at defences rather than take the ball. So I think United will go in next year with effectively one centre forward again. I think it was a real shame he started off injured, but he did really find his feet after a while. Went a long time without a league goal, but was good in the Champions League and did start to find his feet. One of the interesting stats I found about Højlund is he only won 20% of his aerial duels.
Really?
Which is really because he's a big lad, which is really surprising. So maybe if he beefs up over the summer, that could have a big impact on him. I've seen a few videos of him in pre-season training running into medicine balls and stuff like that. So maybe that will help him. I don't know. But yeah, I just read through when I was looking at his profile and found that. I thought that was really surprising.
Yeah. I did look at Rasmus as well because I think there's obviously a very good player in there. It's just almost trying to nurture him, not force him to be this great player, but naturally growing. And because how old is he? He
is, I believe, he's 21. But let me just double check because I don't want to spread misinformation on the first
God
podcast.
Forbid, on the internet.
He is 21. There we go.
Yeah, so you don't have to rush it. I mean, getting first team football at a very high level at that age, I think in 2-3 years' time, he should be, probably nearing 20 goals in the Prem.
Yeah, I mean, for the money that was paid for him, I mean, he should really be there now, but obviously that's not his fault, the price that was paid.
I'm always happier to give a bit of leeway with youngsters because it's not like they're retiring in 2 years. He shouldn't even be in his prime in 2 years. So, yeah, I think that he should have another decent season. I think it should be better than last season. Have a bit more consistency throughout the whole season rather than sort of patches.
I mean, as the team improves, it should really benefit him if he is the finisher. So you hope that works.
And I'm not saying it's because he couldn't finish his chances. I just think, he will have a greater effect on games even if he's not directly on the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he missed a decent chunk of games last season, so hopefully, fingers crossed, he can have an injury-free one and that will help him out.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, right, well, I think that's it in terms of the fantasy teams.
Yeah, so I'm sure our teams will change a lot over the course of the summer leading to the new season as, new transfers are made and new exciting talents come in, but yeah, I think we've both got a good shot at the minute.
Yeah.
Right. Let's move on to our second section now with good stat, bad stat. Do you want to start first?
I can go first. So I've kind of treated this as is it room 101? Is that what they used to call it? Where you used to put something in a room, lock it away and hope you never see it again? I might have made that up. It might be the opposite. Room 101. That's kind of how I've treated this.
Sure, yeah.
We're going to call it Room 101. That might be the complete wrong thing.
Okay.
But I've gone with kind of broadcasting companies showing XG in a game that includes penalties, because there is never, not as in penalties after the game, just to clarify, a game that includes a goal or a missed penalty, because they never tend to clarify it. So I think it was on the BBC. I can't remember. Maybe it was ITV over the Euros, where there was a penalty in the game, and I heard one of the kind of co-commentators or the pundits, I can't remember, again, very hazy with this, but I remember someone going, well, I mean, it's clear they were the better team, even ignoring the penalty. I mean, you can see what the XG says, you can see the shots on target, they had more of the ball. And I looked at the stats when he said it after the game, and if you'd have taken the XG out of the penalty, the team that he was talking about actually would have had a lower XG in the game. And I'm thinking, I wonder how many people don't know that for most models it's about 0.8. That 0.8 of your XG is a penalty, whether it's scored or missed. So a team can play really, really badly, get a penalty in the last minute or something, and suddenly their XG rockets by 0.8. XG is a brilliant stat when used right and thought about right. Yeah. But it's just so frustrating to see XG being compared in a game where there's a penalty, because it just throws it off.
Yeah, for sure. I can't believe that XG, not including pens, isn't a basic statistics that they will use, because if you're getting, around 0.8 for a pen?
Yeah.
If you're getting that added on, I mean, that's huge. Even a good chance in the box might only be 0.3 and you might score. And yet you go, oh, well, this team won 1-0, they had 0.5 XG, the other team had an XG of 1, but they might have missed a penalty.
Exactly.
So it's like, well, yeah, so the other team did deserve to win then. It's frustrating when they just go, oh, look at the stats, because stats are there to be used in a conversation. You can build upon them. They could be the start of a conversation, but they can't just be, oh, look, the numbers don't lie, clearly this was meant to happen, because you have to really delve in deep with it.
Yeah, and I mean, I know there's a lot of hate for XG, and it's situations like this where I can kind of understand it, because people tend to treat XG as a sort of how the game should have gone statistic, but you can't just blindly look at that and not actually know what went on. Because, yeah, like you said, if there's two teams with 1-1 XG and it ends 1-1, you might sit there and you think, oh, that seems like a fairly even game. If you find out that the other team had a 0.2 chance about 1 minute in, and they had a penalty in the last minute which they scored, and it ended 1-1, and the other team had maybe four or five 0.2 chances, you'd be going, well, actually, the other team probably deserved the win, if that's how you want to treat it. Yeah. If you want to treat XG as how the game should have gone, you realistically, you need to take that penalty off, because in no way can you predict or a penalty should have happened. So I don't know, it just really frustrates me.
It is something that hopefully, the broadcasters and everything will understand better, because it creates too many silly arguments about it, I think. But anyway, so I'm going to get into my stat, and it's actually, in my opinion, the ugly cousin of XG. It's XA. So when I was looking at my fantasy team, obviously I have Gordon, and I noticed in his stats it said he had an XA of 5.4. Now, what's interesting in that is that he actually had 10 assists, so he almost double outperformed his XA, and I thought, wow, that's quite extreme, because don't get me wrong, players can do that a fair bit, but for assists, is it he's just knocking it to the side and someone's scoring a screamer? That did happen when Newcastle played West Ham. He gave it to Harvey Barnes.
That was the exact goal I was thinking of too. Yeah.
And then I thought, maybe he's just getting lucky. So I looked through his assists from last season, and actually, he's had some really good ones. So he is one of Newcastle's free kick takers, and he would often be about 25, 30 yards out. And the way he can swing a ball in, or even if it's an outswinger, he was just so effective at finding the man at the back post. And, Newcastle have height too. So I going through the season, you don't always pick up on stuff like that where it's like he was just so pinpoint, perfectly on their head. And then I found possibly one of the most freak assists ever. He played I can't remember who they were playing. It might have been Fulham. He played the ball through to Wilson, who was running into the box. The keeper and defender both went on Wilson. The defender sort of shrugged him off a bit. They all missed the ball. It fell to Almiron, who then just poked it in. But it still counted as Gordon's assist because he was the last person to touch it. But yeah, I feel like with expected assists, in my head, it's a lot harder to really envisage that than XG, because there are just so many factors that can come into play as to why an assist does or does not happen. Is it the player passing gets the pass wrong, or there's a poor touch from the striker, for instance, and I feel that it almost, certainly using Gordon as an example, if you just looked at his XA, it makes him look a lot worse than he actually was.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can't imagine there is a player in any of Europe's top 5 leagues that have scored a minimum of 10 goals but had an XG of like anywhere below 7.
Yeah.
So I guess it shows just how skewed XA can be compared to XG. Yeah. And the only other thing I was thinking of was Gordon draws a lot of fouls and I'd imagine wins a fair few penalties. I wonder how that factors in, because obviously you can't predict that as an assist, but for most metrics, if that penalty is then scored, it would count as an assist.
Yeah, that's a very good point too. I think, again, there's a lot of subjectivity in it. Is that a perfect pass? Often depends on what foot the striker is. So, if you're giving it to a striker on their right foot but they're left-footed, that might not be ideal in the situation. So, I don't know exactly how in depth they can go with it, XA, whether it's like, you've given it to them so they can play it, so they can score first time on their strong foot, that's 10 out of 10. Or if it's just you've given them a chance in front of goal, so it's this. I don't necessarily know how in depth they go, but based on what I saw from Gordon's highlights, and again, highlights don't necessarily tell the full picture, but I would have expected his XA to be higher than what it was.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And I guess every pass has an XA. Maybe that adds up to how skewed this stat could be, because if you're making hundreds of passes in a game and a decent number of them are in the final third, but you're a team, for example, like Man City, which don't tend to release the ball for a shot until pretty close to the goal, or didn't in the past. I know Rodri and Foden have kind of changed that dynamic over the last year and a half, but City tended to have all their shots in the penalty box. A lot of those passes might have been seen as assist-worthy passes where they just keep overplaying it, or not overplaying it, I mean, they won the league and the treble and all of that, but they don't tend to release the ball that quickly. Maybe that plays into it too.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of it at the minute with how it's used.
No, I think that's a good one. Yeah.
We've got another segment called Mathbusters, and basically we want to look at a stat or maybe a commonly thought pre-notion about a player or a team, and try and look into it, see if there is some substance behind it. Now, this week, we've decided to look at Christian Romero, the best centre-back in the league, and the common misconception, I'm saying it now, that he's a dirty player.
Yeah, so I've tried to kind of come up with a more objective view. I've tried to look through the numbers and see if I can argue either way. I know you obviously have your view, but yeah,
I'm completely impartial.
I think the notion is that Romero is a little bit rash in his tackles, aggressive, often overly so. But to be fair, that is certainly based on, I mean, most of that is based on that Chelsea game where he gave away the penalty and got sent off, didn't he?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I think I do enjoy his hard tackles because I think often you maybe see a player running down the wing and you're just like, if you just slide in now, you'll clear him out, but you'll stop the attack. And sometimes they just sit off a bit too much, and I don't know. You just need that player that's full of confidence to just go, right, I'm taking this. Now, obviously, sometimes he does overstep the mark, and some people might claim that it's rash. But yeah, I think that there is a difference between being reckless and being stern with your tackling.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to look through what stats I could use to kind of throw at you and compare with this. And it's actually really hard because kind of looking beyond yellows and reds, I kind of went through everything I could think. So Romero only averages 1 foul per 90, which is pretty mid-range for a defender. Yeah. So it's not like he's committing a load of fouls that aren't fouls. They're not even being given. So it must mean that the fouls he is making are pretty strong and aggressive. So I couldn't find a stat that specifically did this, but I'd imagine he has one of, if not the highest, of cards per foul in the Premier League for defenders that have made more than 10 fouls, for example. There was nothing I could actually find on the internet about that, but from what I could read, that seemed quite high. So I don't know, is it that he's just very aggressive in the fouls he makes, or is it that he goes in flailing his leg about too often, which kind of, obviously you watch him every week, which range do you go for?
If I tell you that he made 66 tackles last season, he got 7 yellows, and obviously, he made 31 fouls. I think, don't get me wrong, there have been some occasions where he probably has fouled someone, but it hasn't been given.
That's what I was thinking.
He's got away with one, but there have been a few times where he slid in, and I think he's won enough of the ball for it to not be a foul. And sometimes I do wonder if there is that going on in the ref's mind. If you know someone is a bit more crazy and, likes to get physical, do you keep an extra eye on them and saying, oh, that's going to be a free kick before they've even made contact?
Yeah, I mean, that backs up the other point. I'm still shocked that he only makes 1 foul per 90. I mean, for the number of yellow and red cards he has in the league, that's nuts. 1 foul per 90 for Romero. I would have never guessed that. So that would back up your point that maybe there is just this, referees are looking to book him, rightly or wrongly. Obviously, sometimes he fully deserves it.
Yeah. Actually, I've got an interesting question. Who do you think committed the most fouls in the Premier League last season?
Oh, most fouls. Can you... I'm trying to think of a clue. My assumption would have been a central midfielder. Yeah,
that's the correct thought.
I'm not necessarily going with the players that have had the most yellows, but I know he had a few. I know he played a lot of minutes. Bruno Guimaraes, maybe?
Ooh, good one. Not quite, though. It was actually Conor Gallagher.
See, that doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah.
Absolutely smashed it out the park.
He is very aggressive in the tackles.
He had a whopping 83 fouls last season, He committed 83 fouls, which was 17 higher than anyone else.
That is nuts. I mean, I guess Gallagher is, I don't know, that is his job, isn't he? He's a little bit of a Duracell bunny. He's not really the best on the ball, but he brings a lot of energy. Maybe that makes sense. I mean, for reference, Romero makes 2.13 tackles per 90, just averaging out what you've said. Yeah. Gallagher makes 2.45, so there's not that much difference in terms of the tackles they make per game. Obviously, that's a bit surprising as well because Romero's a centre-back, so you'd expect that to be a lot lower. Yeah. But yeah, that is an enormous number of fouls for Gallagher, isn't it? Yeah.
I couldn't believe it when I was looking through. I do think that, maybe Romero doesn't always get the credit he deserves because he's tagged with this dirty player, label. But I won't pretend that he doesn't sometimes go in a bit too hard.
But yeah, and the other thing I was thinking is maybe he just goes to ground too often. That going to ground doesn't make you a dirty player. It just it's lack of judgment.
It increases the risk of giving a foul because you then can't really move. The player can use you to go over or whatever, and so. But anyway, that was Mathbusters.
Nice. Right, so the quiz, which obviously I am hosting.
God.
So there's kind of no rule as to clues you want. I can kind of do this as and when. We'll see how you go. We'll give you an opportunity to kind of throw a few names out that you'd expect, and then I'll try and guide you towards maybe the ones you wouldn't. So we're going to go top 10 of most distance covered in the Premier League. So this needs to factor in, effectively, this isn't per 90, this is total distance. So you need to factor in how often the players play, ideally really position, team. I mean, how does that factor into your thinking? I don't know. But why don't you throw a few names out and I'll tell you if they're on the list.
Well, my idea is that it's either going to be centre mids or fullbacks.
Okay, so I can tell you there are no fullbacks.
No fullbacks, really?
There are quite...
I would have thought with the way that, they're obviously bombing down and then having to sprint back, that, wow, that is interesting. Okay.
No fullbacks at all on the list. There are quite a few centre mids. In fact, it depends how you'd classify them, but I'd say all bar one play somewhere in central midfield. Or one you could maybe call a fullback. He kind of... I don't want to give it away, so why don't you have a few guesses, tell me why you think they are, and I'll tell you if they're right or wrong.
I'll go for one that's probably most obvious to say I don't necessarily think he is, but Rodri.
So Rodri is 10th.
Okay, he is 10th, yeah.
That makes sense, I guess.
Obviously, he's not necessarily having to run back so much, but you see how when City have possession, he's often almost like a warden. He goes to the left, helps out a bit, goes to the right, sometimes makes a run forward. Like, even though he's not having to cover tons when the other team are attacking, he still gets about quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, how often is he on the edge of the box 5 seconds after he plays the ball to John Stones? I mean, that's totally true. And obviously, playing so many minutes for City obviously helps too. But so Rodri's 10th. Any other names on the top of your head at the moment?
Rice.
Yep, so Declan Rice is third.
Ooh.
So I guess Rice's role kind of changing has maybe affected that. I mean, at West Ham, he was very much a screen in front of the back four, team sat deep. Arsenal, he's kind of been reinvented as a kind of 6/8 roaming central midfielder. What have you thought of that? Kind of Rice being pushed further forward.
I think he's shown that he does have the quality to do that. He scored a few goals last season, and he does have a creative side to him. But I think as an almost enforcer, you're not going to get past me type player. I think that's, for me at least, that's where I prefer him.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I mean, I think that creative side is brilliant, but at the end of the day, who would you rather on the ball with 20 yards of space? Probably Jorginho in front of Rice. I'd want Rice playing to his strength, almost in a Rodri way of if there's an opportunity to get up there, go for it. But your main job is to be in front of the back four first and foremost. And I was really surprised that he got kind of pushed into more of an advanced role. And it worked.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't say it didn't work.
Yeah.
But I was really surprised, and it's not really where I prefer him.
It's tricky because with injuries and yeah. Teams in Europe needing rotation.
Absolutely. Let's go with. I'll give you a clue. So
go on then.
I'll try and go with the more obvious ones first. So one of them played many games, ended up captaining his side for a lot of the season, and made a lot of fouls this year.
Ooh, who could that be? Could it be Conor Gallagher?
Yeah, I mean that's sort of what you'd expect, and you'd expect him to cover a lot of ground. Yeah, not really a ball player. That is sort of his job. Yeah,
his job is just to be an annoying little dog that's yapping constantly.
Yeah. Out of the other obvious ones, I mean, again, I'll give you the team. I think you'll get it straight away. I'll get Newcastle.
Gamirez?
Yeah. He's actually top. So he covered the most distance in the Premier League this year. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Obviously, the way Newcastle play is quite dynamic, end to end.
Yeah.
And he brings the energy, I guess.
What position was Gallagher?
Gallagher was fourth, so it goes Guimarães, someone, Rice, Gallagher, someone, Rodri.
Yeah, okay.
Right, so why don't we try and go with number 2? So this player plays in a team that actually has quite a lot of the ball, quite a nice build-up, not really known for his kind of energy and tackling, known as being quite a good ball player, covers often right back quite a lot of the time, or has in the past, but is kind of more naturally a holding midfielder. Doesn't play in a team that finished in Europe this year, but still a team that is known for kind of their nice football.
Right.
Could you guess the team based on that?
So they're not usually in Europe, are they?
No, not usually. They have been in Europe recently, but they aren't known for being in Europe very often ever.
Is it Brighton?
Yeah, so Brighton is the team. So holding midfielder that's kind of known for his ball play and takes free kicks, corners, penalties, but covers
Pascal
fullback.
Gross.
Yeah, so that one really surprised me. He was second this year for distance cover.
Wow. Yeah, I as well, when I was doing my fantasy team, I noticed that he did. I mean, he was the top for Brighton for so many different things, and I think he goes under the radar for almost how much of an architect he is in that team.
Yeah, I mean, and at 33 years old, to be second in distance covered total for the Premier League is pretty impressive. I mean, yeah, and the most impressive bit, I think, out of all of it, is he's not known for that. He's known for being a really good kind of ball playing holding midfielder, whereas the others maybe are known a little bit more for being all action. He's really known as a ball player, so yeah, I was really impressed. But yeah, right, let's dip further down. So in 5th you have a player that is similarly known for being good on the ball rather than being all action. Captains his side, Norwegian international.
Odegaard?
Yeah. So Odegaard is 5th.
Okay. Wow, 5th.
Yeah.
So Arsenal have 2 in the top 5.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know he plays a lot of games, but I wouldn't have necessarily gone again with Odegaard being high for distance covered. Do you think pocket player maybe can afford to not do too much running off the ball, just kind of needs to drift into the right places? But yeah, no. 5th in the charts.
Wow.
Right, 6th is a team, plays in a team that got relegated this year.
Okay.
Anyone jumping out at you?
Not hugely at the minute.
So plays in a team that isn't particularly structured. They're a little bit more free. So I think that gives you 1 out of the 3 teams. You've got 2 very structured defences.
Oh, was it Burnley?
Yep. So Burnley, central midfielder. Actually moved from Sheffield United to Burnley over the summer.
Oh, Sander Berger.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
I believe, I guess Declan Rice is quite tall, but I think he is the tallest out of the players on the list. Actually, maybe Rodri as well.
Yeah.
But either way, it's quite rare to have a player really, really tall cover a load of ground. But obviously, position ticks the box. The way Burnley play kind of ticks the box.
Yeah.
But yeah. Right, moving further down. This one kind of expected, although did drop in and out of the team quite a fair bit. So, interesting one. Known as being a very good set piece taker.
Ward-Prowse?
There you go. That was all I needed to say. Yeah. So Ward-Prowse is just behind Sander Berge. He doesn't quite break the 400-kilometre distance for the season. But yeah, he's dropped in and out of the West Ham team.
Yeah.
So it's quite an interesting one.
I did have a feeling there'd be a West Ham player in it because, even though maybe it was a bit of a lacklustre season for them, you do get runners, and I think, Ward-Prowse, he's been around for a while now, and he knows what it takes to put effort in.
Yeah, I mean, honourable mention for someone that isn't on the list but tends to be kind of every game and has broken individual West Ham records is Thomas Souček, who tends to cover a lot of ground. I'm almost surprised he's not on there, if I'm honest.
I was going to say him, to be honest, but then obviously the set pieces led me the other way.
Right, I'll give you... So there are two more. One you'd expect, one you wouldn't. So I'll give you the one you'd expect in ninth. How could I describe him? Known as being a good ball player. Takes penalties. Quite well known for that.
Well, there's a few penalty takers in the Prem.
All right, I'll keep going. Not really known for his kind of aggressive tackling. He's pushed out wide a couple of times, especially for his team. But he's often seen as the best player in the team, almost carrying them. Has been at his club for quite a while now.
Is it Fulham?
No. I'm really trying not to give this away. Let me think. He nearly ended up signing for Spurs under Jose Mourinho.
Well, there's a lot.
He's a central midfielder, but you'd class him probably more as a number 10. I don't think you'd call him a central midfielder. He lifted a trophy last season.
Is it one of your boys?
It is indeed. It's a Man United player.
Oh, Bruno.
Yep. So Bruno was in ninth. So I think Bruno's only missed one game in his career to injury. So I think that feeds into it quite well as well. And then there's one more, which I am absolutely stunned by. So he is a centre forward.
Oh.
Which is interesting. Played a lot of games for his club this year. Had a bit of a breakthrough season, if you want to put it that way, even though he's kind of known by everyone anyways.
Solanke?
Oh, he's got it straight away. Yeah.
Yes.
So Solanke was in 8th. That's unbelievable. So Solanke was in 8th.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. So more distance covered than Rodri and Bruno Fernandes.
God, you wouldn't have thought that, but again, he's another hard worker. Like, he's a proper centre forward. And
I guess Iraola's kind of Bielsa style principles, maybe that makes sense. But I was just really shocked to see him on the list. But yeah, there you go. So I'll just run through the list one more time and tell you it in order. So you've got Bruno Guimaraes with 423 kilometres for the season. Pascal Gross with 421. Declan Rice with 412. Gallagher with 407. Odegaard with 401. Sander Berge with just under 401. Ward-Prowse with 398. Solanke with 397. Bruno with 390. And Rodri with just under 389.
Well, that's incredible, because there were a few surprises in there. That, I mean, certainly I think Gross for doing that at 33.
Yeah.
He's like a steam train.
Yeah, I mean, the three that stood out to me were Gross, Ward-Prowse and Solanke. I don't think I'd have got any of those three.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. A like and a follow is greatly appreciated, and don't forget you can rate if you're listening on Spotify. This has been Football with the Faff. Goodbye.